So just a moment ago, you alluded to the deli expansion.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little
exactly.
bit about that?
Yeah, super cool. And just this little tiny kitchen was never meant to be a production kitchen. It's like a little commissary kitchen, It's basically smaller than my home kitchen, And so we've been working out of it for years and years, and it's ridiculous. We can't do it. We have to get orders in every day and put them away, and the line is tiny. And
How many sandwiches do you do on a day in a busy summer?
well, this summer we had a day where we did, I think, between 800 and 900 sandwiches, and we're open 9 hours a day. So we were pumping out
100 sandwiches an hour, which doesn't happen. It's
Yeah.
500 sandwiches
because
probably in
it's
90
not
minutes.
the minute you
Yeah.
open till the minute you close. So so it's doing tremendous volume that I never dreamed it would do, and I'm so humbled and I'm so grateful. But at the same time,
900 sandwiches. That's 1,800 pieces of bread.
yeah,
How many pieces of bread are in a loaf?
yeah, you can get about 7 or 8 sandwiches out of a loaf. So
Where do you keep all this bread at?
I know. In my car,
Yeah,
in Sam's truck. Yeah, we pick it up every morning and
Wow.
and baking it off as we go. In our freezer we keep the croissant dough, and
Wow.
we keep the Dutch crunch. So yeah, it's a lot of bread.
Welcome to the Spencer Covey Show. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to the show.
If you are interested in any of our innovation and creativity workshops or materials, please head over to spencercovey.com or patreon.com/spencercovey.
And now please enjoy this episode with Chris Ferris, owner of the Farmhouse Deli in Saugatuck, Michigan.
Today on the podcast, we have Christine Ferris from the Farmhouse Deli. She is an accomplished caterer, restaurateur, chef, artist. Let's see what else I can think of. Crystal bowl healing practitioner, sound arts, and an all-around badass. Thank you for joining me today here in your deli.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is so cool.
Yes. And full disclosure, this is our second time trying.
That's why I'm kind of cracking up.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
That was a good practice run.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation too. Super cool. So
I've got it. I might be able to pull out little tidbits and stuff like that. I just, it's one of those things where you can't let the bumps discourage. I can't let the bumps discourage me.
No.
Oh,
Keep
shoot.
forging ahead.
Hang on.
The
Hang
reveal.
on.
It's
Hang
time
on.
for the reveal.
Hang on. What am I doing? What am I doing?
Representing.
All right. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. When were you first drawn to the food arts, do you think?
My first sentence was, "What's that spice?" Seriously, my mom said
Are you
that.
serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. My mom said my first sentence was, "What's that spice?" Yeah, so before I was 2 years old. And I can remember vividly, like, standing on a stool in my mom's kitchen and having her open cupboards and just looking in the cupboards and pulling things out. And she said I would only eat Gerber baby food jars that I had to point to which one I wanted or I wouldn't eat it. So I guess I was just born into food. So
Wow. So was your mom's spice cabinet?
Oh, amazing. My mom is a really fantastic cook, and she comes from a long lineage of really good cooks. Her family had a German restaurant called Schlogel's Weinstube in Chicago in the late 1800s and up until like the 1930s.
So you never went to it?
No, because I was born in the 60s.
Right, yeah.
But
Did
it's
the
really,
math there real quick.
Yeah, it's really funny because I did some history on it, and like every time I'm looking up something with my family history, it's like, and there was a knife fight and so was killed. Well, in this case, the chef's son was in a card game, and he cheated, and someone stabbed and killed him, and his body was dumped on the front porch of their house. So that was the first thing I discovered about my family's beautiful restaurant in Chicago back in the 1920s. So
Chicago's always been pretty wild.
yeah, kind of wild. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, for
But-
a Midwest town.
But it was very cool, other than that, to read about the history of my family's restaurant. Like, it was a big staple in Chicago for a really long time.
Have you retained any of the recipes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my mom's got some really great recipes, the sauerbraten, the potato pancakes, and the German potato salad. And she's got the most beautiful plate. It's this beautiful china plate that has like a deep purple indigo blue rim with a gold inlay over it.
Okay.
And yeah, that was the dishes used there. And it's really funny. I was looking at a menu, and one of the things on the menu was owl.
Like the bird?
I guess owl was kind of popular back in like the early 1900s.
Could you imagine the
Ugh.
backlash today
Yeah.
if
I think I'm going to try it. I think I'll put owl on the menu here. We've got some smoked owl salad, croissant. no, it's terrible.
I was down in Florida one time, and on the chalkboard, the dish of the day was dolphin.
Oh, God. Yeah. So, and people think it's.
I was like, what? I don't.
Yeah.
I asked the server. I said, I don't. Can you do that?
It's a different kind of
Mahi,
dolphin.
yeah.
right.
Just it's a
Right.
fish
Yeah,
instead of
exactly.
a mammal.
But, like, wouldn't that be terrible?
I think so.
We have porpoise.
Are there? Okay, so are there any? What was the name of the restaurant again?
Schlogel's Weinstube.
Has Schlogel's Weinstube's recipes found their way into the deli at all?
Yeah, I've made the potato pancakes here several times.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I've done the German potato salad or a version of it. I really need to get my mom's written recipe. So, because I do a lot of things from my memory, like this is what I remember it being. And then when I look at the recipe, my memory has tweaked things a little bit oftentimes. But sometimes it's better, so it's kind of cool. The memory is an interesting thing.
And your mom was living in Santa Cruz, or is living
Well, yeah, that's a long story. They're in Florida now.
Florida
But,
now?
Yeah, so I was born in South Haven, and my parents got a divorce in '76, and my mom and my little brother and I moved down to the Florida Keys with my now stepdad back then for a year or two. And then we moved out to California, where my mom's family had relocated in the 50s. So, yeah, so I kind of grew up my first 12 years in South Haven, and then kind of hopped around Florida and then California for like junior high, high school, college.
Mm-hmm. And in South Haven, your dad, Jim Bradley, had the Willem Baum. I think
Yeah.
I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, Wilhelm Baum. Yep.
And
Close enough.
it's a diesel-powered tugboat that's currently in front of the what is the name?
Maritime
Museum.
Museum.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
And my dad was telling me stories about how he would watch it go out of the harbor to save people on rough days.
Yeah, my dad was a badass. He was so brave.
And what I want to trigger your memory again. What were you saying about the seagulls and the smoke?
Oh yeah, because it was diesel and this old Collenberg engine. It put out quite a dark smoke plume, and my dad would be out on the lake, and seagulls would try to land on the smoke of the Collenberg smoke, which was really funny. And I remember when I was a kid, I would spend my summers at the harbor with my dad, but we wouldn't wear like little white yachting shorts. We'd wear like blue jean cutoffs and dark shirts because it was all
grimy.
Grimy and diesel-y. And
Was he a diver as well?
He
Wasn't he a
was.
recovery diver?
yeah. My dad started diving, and I've got the coolest film of him. Like
oh, wow.
South Haven, like the pier back in the probably late 40s and early 50s of him. He had a hard hat with the whole canvas suit and everything. And
Whoa.
really beautiful. My stepmom had it. I think she just sold it, but it was super cool.
The photo, you mean?
Well, no, the actual
the suit.
brass hard hat, the big hard hat with the
Oh.
canvas suit and the rubber seal and the big lead boots that you would wear. So he would do demos. He'd go off the end of the South Pier in South Haven and let people try the diving suit. And
Is that
he was a commercial diver for years too.
is that the kind that has the hose hooked up to
Yeah,
it that
yep.
you're
The two
Nice.
hoses, yeah.
That's like the classic,
Like
vision.
Jewel,
Yeah.
what is it?
Jules Verne.
20,000 leagues under
Yeah.
the sea for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. You're
Yep.
fighting off the
Yeah,
octopus trying to.
exactly. Yeah, my dad, like, he set some world records. One of the things he did when he was a commercial diver was inspect all the intake and outlet systems on the nuclear power
For
plants.
Palisades.
Yeah, so like the pipes go out, like I think like over a mile. You know?
Yeah, I've heard the
And
same
he
thing.
used to have to go up in those in the dark and like photograph the whole thing. And
In the
just-
tube?
Yeah, he'd go way up those intake things.
And
yeah.
that's the record he set?
Yeah, for like going into containment, like it was a mile or a mile and a half, not containment, but in in tubes underwater. So
I think it's super dangerous.
I don't know.
It's like cave diving. Well, I guess caves are dangerous because they're caves,
right.
so the tube's not going to collapse
no,
on you. But
yeah, still kind of a freaky thing to do.
where do you think he got that temperament from? That
He was always an adventurer. Like even when he was a little boy, he was very into trying different things and building things and trying to build robots. And so was my uncle. Like very, very brilliant men. Really creative. And my grandpa was too, and really, encouraged that sort of thing. So.
and your dad ended up building cannon bases for museums.
Yeah, yep. That was another job he had. It was Bradley Carriages Ltd. He did Civil War reproductions, and he also did like some Revolutionary War cannon carriages and stuff. And there was this guy who had a foundry in Indiana who would pour the cannons and lathe them and do all the work on them. And then my dad would do the carriages, and they'd deliver them to museums and things together.
Wow. Did you help him with that too?
Yeah, I used to help deliver to museums. I remember doing that a few times and like thinking it was super cool.
It is.
Yeah. And then over the years, like all my nieces and nephews, my dad would make like little miniature cannon carriages for them for
Aw.
Christmas with like he would lathe the cannons himself. He had his workshop was like a mad scientist. It had a metal area and a wood and a hot metal and a cold metal and his electrical stuff. So his workshop was super cool.
He's smelting the iron himself?
Yeah, I'm pouring. He had a little foundry and a little blacksmith shop, and
Wow.
yeah, I know.
That's
And then he had
incredible.
compressors. He could fill air tanks for divers and stuff. Like he always had interesting people coming out to his shop to have him help them fabricate like crazy things that they needed. and
Yeah, I
stuff.
bet.
And I
Yeah.
remember when I was a kid, he used to have a lot of friends. There was this group of people called Space in South Haven,
Mhm.
and it was artists like the Battles and gosh, I can't think of his name right now, but a bunch of pretty famous artists that had Chicago connections, and they would put on art shows in South Haven like in the 60s and 70s. And my dad was connected into that. Like he would help a lot of the sculptors fabricate pieces they needed for like large scale sculpture and stuff.
And it was called Space?
Space. Yeah.
What's that? Is that an
I
acronym
don't
or is that
remember.
just
I'm sure it is. I don't remember what it stands for, but I wish I did. I have to look it up.
Special People
Art.
Arting? Yeah.
Community, yeah.
Community education maybe
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, who knows?
So let's go back to Santa Cruz and talk a little bit about your culinary school education, because you were saying that was a special time in you were having people kind of, I guess what your dad was doing for the artists, kind of the other chefs in Santa Cruz were doing for the
For us
students.
students, yeah. So I graduated high school in '82, and I took a year off. I was in Michigan at the time, and I really wanted to go to art school, but I couldn't quite figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And my mom's like, "Why don't you try culinary school? There's a great program, here in Santa Cruz." And so I thought about it. I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds really cool." So I got into culinary school, and it was a really amazing time to be in culinary school because we had all these mentors that were really famous chefs, like Alice Waters from Chez Panisse would come and talk to us, and like her pastry chef was my pastry chef who taught me pastry, a real French pastry chef. And then we would go to
Can you remember anything? It's like that they would say, like, you must beat the eggs
Oh, she
properly
was
12 times.
She
in
was
one-"
beautiful,
Yeah.
and just the way she taught was magnificent. I think today
What do
It
you?
was her that taught me my love of pastry. I've been a pastry chef for years and years, and
Wow.
I really love it so much. And like we would go to Stars and Jeremiah Tower. I've talked to him when I was a kid, and he really inspired me and helped me get kind of dialed in on what I wanted to do. And then there, Randall Graham, who's pretty famous in the wine scene. I used to go to Bonnie Doon Vineyard all the time and hang out with him and drink wine. So, yeah.
Were there any, little strong takeaways that you recall from that education?
Oh,
Little sayings or
tons
anything?
of them. And I think um, the one thing was you can get an education, but it's really your experience and what you put into it and your creativity and your passion that's going to make your food good. You can have all the technique in the world, but if you don't have the passion and the creativity and the fire, it's not going to.
Do you recall if there was anything that you were certain that you knew that school or your mentors convinced you that there was another way to look at? Kind of like one of those things where like an eye-opening experience.
Trying to think of an experience. I mean, there was tons of it all the time. And I remember a lot of what makes me a good manager now is the crappy managers I had when I was younger,
Yeah.
getting into the food scene back in the 80s, even in California was, there weren't many women in the kitchens and, they're like, you're going to stay in the pantry and you can make desserts and you're not going to get on the line. So I think a lot of that just really inspired me to not be that way, you know?
And you opened the door, or at least you were the first woman in the
In
kitchen,
that
you were
restaurant,
saying.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then several restaurants in Michigan that I worked in. When I moved to Michigan, I was the first woman to work in. So, yeah.
What role do you think that competitiveness played in
A
that?
huge role.
Yeah.
I've always been competitive. I was really into track when I was in junior high and high school. And I love that competition. It teaches you to stay calm under pressure, but it also teaches you to use that nervous energy to propel yourself to a better level than you think you can. And being the first woman in kitchens, I had a lot of chefs who thought that I've even been called. I had one business owner say, do you know any other little housewives who'd like to cook here? And I was like, all right. So I really thought, like, I need to work twice as hard. I need to never complain, and I need to keep up with every man. And so I remember, just working twice as hard to just try to give women a good name in the kitchen.
Did the ice thaw pretty quickly when they saw you working twice as hard and doing everything?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it still wouldn't stop me from being competitive. Like, it's a trick that I learned a long time ago. If you want people to do something fast, put two people who are competitive on the same job and just like have them work side by side and see who's going to push it faster, So yeah, things like that, I don't do that a lot, but
but it's a trick.
But it's a trick. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And you were also mentioning the education or the continuing education, I guess, at Zingerman's around.
That has been fantastic. So I thought I didn't like management. To me, it was just a bunch of people telling you, just boring information that I didn't see how it applied to me or my employees, and then I took a class at Zingerman's just because I'm like, I need to have some sort of management knowledge and training. And I had read a couple of books and started warming up to the idea. And then when I was at Zingerman's, I'm like, holy cow, this is so cool. It's about how you relate to people and how you let them know you respect them and just letting people open up and be more creative. And the bottom line training course I did there was like life-changing for me. It explained, like, for instance, one thing is if you're going to show someone how to do something, what you need to do is say, today we're going to learn how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm going to make it the way I normally make it at full speed, and then I'm going to slow down and go over each component with you. And then I'm going to make another one. And then I'm going to ask you if you're ready to make them. And by the end of this training, I'd like you to be able to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Then they know what they're supposed to be focusing on. Otherwise, if you just grab a jar of peanut butter and a loaf of bread and go stand over somewhere and they're like, what am I supposed to be paying attention to? Like,
Just follow along.
yeah, exactly. You know, they can't really relax and focus in. But if you give someone an objective, it really helps them relax and absorb information a lot better. And like I did that wrong for a good 30 years until I took that course at Zingerman's.
Were you for the first 30 years, were you of the mindset of just kind of like follow along and watch what I'm doing?
Shadow. I mean, shadow is pretty much how you learn everything in a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always shadowing, you know, and then like, just start helping me. And then when they do it wrong, no, not like that, you know, no.
Yeah.
And I never realized how saying no to someone, like, no, not like that. Like even a little thing like that can really shut someone's spirit down.
Mm-hmm.
So I've really learned to like try to open people's spirits and not be such a, you know, not like this. And
So when there is a moment of correction, what's a better way?
a better way is like, hey, you're getting close to it. Can I, you know, give you a tip to get it even closer to how it needs to be?
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Encouraging instead of like,
Yeah. Yeah. Slap.
Yeah, get him. Yeah. Give me that knife.
I mean, nobody likes to hear no.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially when you think you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Or trying to
Or
do
you're
a good
trying,
Yeah.
you know, and then it just it's flustering.
Yeah.
Even just, I'm a really sensitive person. I'm sensitive, I'm empathic. I know what other people are thinking. So I'm like, I couldn't believe that I didn't even know this stuff that I was doing myself to other people. So,
It's so interesting how much humans need each other.
yeah.
Community.
And supporting each other and words of affirmation, but they need to be honest. Like you can smell bullshit a mile away when, you know, it's
Typically.
a fake compliment.
Yeah.
So to give sincere, you know, words of encouragement
And really mean it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I do it all day here. I walk through and I'm like, that's a beautiful sandwich, you know, and oh my gosh, look how good are those, and that soup is fantastic. But I'm also gonna say, hey, that soup is really good, but maybe it needs a little more of this, or you know, what do you think? You know, so it's really presenting information. That's been a big learning
Sounds like
curve for me.
If I was to summarize, it sounds like you're providing guidance instead of correction.
Yeah, I think, that's the goal. That's the goal. And I think that's the goal with everything,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's not so much that you've done this wrong. It's just that maybe
Yeah.
there's a room for improvement. You did great, but.
And also, I remember early on in the game, like, I thought there was one right way to do things. And there are many, like cutting onions, for instance. You know, some people cut it in half and they'll slice it down and keep that little end on it and then come through it. And that's not how I do it. I do it a different way. And in my early years, I would tell everybody, like, here's how I want my onions cut. And I'm like, I don't care how you cut the onions as long as you give me a consistent dice that is this size, you know? And I feel bad that I micromanaged so badly when I was so young, but I had no management experience and I was doing the best I can. And please forgive me, my friends.
Now's your chance. You evolved from a catering business.
Yeah. So when I graduated from culinary school, I worked in all kinds of restaurants, fine dining, delis, Italian. I really loved this Italian restaurant I worked at in California and Chicago and Michigan. But I always really loved doing parties for people. And it worked really well when I became a mom because I was trying to take care of my son. And I was able to work out of my house and do these events. And it just kind of organically grew. I never planned, you know, to build a catering business. It just kind of evolved continuously for like the last 40 years. And I feel I love catering. Like you got to be kind of a kamikaze crazy person to do it long term, you know?
I would imagine.
And I feel I've had a lot of my chef friends like, we're going to do catering and add to our income this year. And I'm like, all right, give it a try, see what you think, And then at the end of the year, they're like, what the hell, man? That's insane. That's crazy. And I'm like, yep. It
Sure
is.
is.
It sure is,
What do you think it is about it that you are drawn to then?
I have always loved ad-libbing or having like to figure something out on the spot. And I really love that with catering too. And it feels kind of like Brigadoon, I remember doing site checks where a wedding is going to be. And typically it's like in the fall, and the leaves are gone and the yard's all lumpy and stuff, and then we'll come back in the spring and finalize it. And then the day of the event, tents are up, flowers are in, everything is just stunning and gorgeous. And then the music comes in and people are drinking champagne and it's like this incredible energy swirling. And then you serve them the food and it's like, this hot, beautiful meal just comes from nowhere, from behind a bush, Yeah. And then the next day, whoop, it all gets swept away and there's a yard where that once was, and you look at that yard and, that they'll remember this event that was there for just a moment in time.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think it's kind of theatrical. Like if I was in theater, I would definitely be doing sets and things like that. I love just creating things and making them beautiful and functional and
set design.
I would.
Yeah, you're doing set design and feeding the folks at the same time.
Exactly.
It's extremely ethereal art.
Yeah, it's really fun. I love it, but boy, oh boy, is it time consuming.
Yeah.
So that's why we've cut way back on it here. It takes a lot of space and it takes a lot of time. And I realized I'm running 2 full-time businesses at the same time. And the deli is year-round, and I really needed to give it my focus. So we've kind of backed off the big events that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we still will always do platters and things like that. I love platters and presentation. And it's really fun to get someone in who's never done platters and they start working with you and the next thing you know they're making platters that are more gorgeous than what I can do. And I'm like, look at you go, man. That's so awesome. So, I can't tell you how many people in this community started with their, catering career with me and they've gone out on their own and it's just really cool to see.
Starting with platters.
Yeah, start with platters and
is that both happy and bittersweet to see a successful enough protege move on to their own?
Oh, yeah. It kills me every time. I'm like one of these really clingy people that I want to be together and I don't ever want anything to change. Let's just stay together forever. And,
yeah.
But at the same time, I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have mentors and some people encouraging me and pushing me and telling me that I couldn't stop. And I know that I'm in the position now that that's my job. So I'm really proud of people when they want to move on. And I miss them. And I'm like, you better come and visit me.
Yeah.
Just give me enough notice that you don't screw me over. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're taking off.
Yeah, and I have a dream. It would be really great to work with a chef for long term, and maybe I've got that with Matt and Nick, that'd be really cool if we hang out because we've got some really big ideas of some cool things we'd like to do down the pike.
Holgren power.
Yeah, I know those guys are amazing. They're so badass, man. They're they're amazing chefs and amazing people, and they're really fun to be with. And but
powerful karaoke
said,
parties.
They come from a fine dining background and making potato salad and turkey club sandwiches and things like that. Yes, they're applying their finesse and making sure that we get a consistent product on a large scale, but that doesn't give them the creativity and the presentation and things. So that's a good part about doing the catering, the high-end weddings. But we've also been talking, once we get the addition done, we've got some really cool parties that we'd like to start doing some pop-ups on our own, kind of some cool outdoor events, with fire being the center of it, and doing live cooking.
Fire,
dinners.
huh?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, Francis Malman, how he does these big events where he'll have these huge fires, and then he'll have like steaks with animals split open kind of over the fire cooking and the smoke and the elements, and the herbs and the salt. And I'll never forget a wedding we did, I don't know how many years ago, but it was right here in Saugatuck, and she really wanted lamb. And so we got a whole lamb, And a couple days ahead of time, I rubbed it down with garlic and rosemary and sea salt and cracked pepper. And then we got it on the spit that morning. And I got a bazooka, like a, like what, not a bazooka, but what do you call those water tanks, like in Indian that you put water in?
Oh, yeah.
But we filled it with box wine, like Merlot or Pinot Noir, I think it was. And we just misted it. Like it was on the spit for like 7 or 8 hours. So you had the smoke and you had, the mist, and it was this beautiful mahogany color falling off the bone. It was like the best meat I'd ever eaten in my life. And so something alchemical was happening, and I'm like, I want to be able to create that, allow the elements and the day and everything to kind of come into play to create a magic that, I'll never have that lamb again. That was much like the wedding, kind of a moment in time, a magical thing that you'll never forget.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be really cool for us to be able to create events like that, like at different farms and properties around out in the country, because there's so much beautiful land here. Like we don't need to sit in a dining room to have a badass meal experience.
Yeah. So it leads me to wonder about the intersection of chemistry and cooking and whatnot. Did you notice an early affinity to chemistry as well?
Yeah, sure. When I was a kid, like science was like my second favorite class. I loved art. I also loved English, but science was fascinating to me, and it still is really interesting to me. So yeah, the chemical reactions that happen, I don't think you can be a great chef or even a good chef without understanding, how food happens, And then that being said, the other side is true. You can tell what's gone wrong. When I look at a flop that someone's like brings to me and like, why did this do this? I can usually, like, well, it was either A, B, or C. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well,
probably
those are the options that we have here, Otherwise there was a ghost who just came and screwed with everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And are you able to, once you identify the variable that was a little bit off, are you a lot of times able to?
Sometimes we can correct it and sometimes we have to start all over, but it's also a great learning opportunity. My dad said that education always has a price, and whether it's your time and having to redo something, or whether it's a financial mistake that you have to pay for, or whether you go to college, there's a price to be paid. So when something flops, the way to get over it is like, well, here's what I learned, and that's what it cost to learn that lesson.
I heard this saying a while back that it's just stuck in my head. Experience is what you get right after you needed it.
Yeah, exactly. I love that one. That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of teaches us to forgive ourselves. Like we can't be all knowing. We can't know everything.
Yeah.
But what you can do is learn, be open to doing better next time. So
yeah, and with food, well, with professional food preparation, chef work, I got to assume it's just like anything else. One little thing could be off, and the dough doesn't rise, or the what have you, and it's one of those things that once you get it, I think you've got it, but getting there it's not always
right
so easy.
And knowing that there are things that can go wrong, that comes back to menu planning. So if I'm doing an off-site wedding, I am not going to plan a whole bunch of food that takes last-second preparations, that you have to do on site that could flop when you have no backup plan.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to try one thing, but always knowing that I better have a backup plan in case that one thing doesn't work,
Wow.
something that would be delicious. But if it does pull off, it would be amazing,
So just a moment ago, you alluded to the deli expansion.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, super cool. So, when I got the deli going, I thought it was just going to be this cute little 1-unit thing where me and maybe a friend of mine would sit in the back and play music and cook some great food, and I'd have someone out front selling it and visiting with people, and we'd sell out around 2 or 3 and close and go to the beach.
Yeah.
And
The three of you.
Yeah, just hang out and run this business. And I quickly realized, like, that's not how this is going to go. If I want to be sustainable, we've got to do some volume here. And so I switched gears and we got really busy. And at the time, I still had my catering kitchen in Holland, but I quickly realized that having 2 kitchens was just not logistically feasible.
Here and there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was too expensive.
Waking up at
and
3:30 to go
yeah,
bake and then
yeah,
down here to.
right.
Oof.
And just wherever I wasn't,
Oh,
it felt like fire. I was putting out fires when I'd get back there. So it just didn't work. So we closed the kitchen, which I loved that kitchen so much, in Holland. And just this little tiny kitchen was never meant to be a production kitchen. It's like a little commissary kitchen, It's basically smaller than my home kitchen, And so we've been working out of it for years and years, and it's ridiculous. We can't do it. We have to get orders in every day and put them away, and the line is tiny. And
how many sandwiches do you do on a day in a busy summer?
well, this summer we had a day where we did, I think, between 800 and 900 sandwiches, and we're open 9 hours a day. So we were pumping out
100 sandwiches an hour, which doesn't happen. It's
Yeah.
500 sandwiches
because
probably in
it's
90
not
minutes.
The minute you
Yeah.
open till the minute you close. So yeah, so it's doing tremendous volume that I never dreamed it would do. And I'm so humbled and I'm so grateful. But at the same time,
900 sandwiches. That's 1,800 pieces of bread.
yeah.
How many pieces of bread are in a loaf?
Yeah, you can get about 7 or 8 sandwiches out of a loaf. So
Where do you keep all this bread at?
I know. In my car,
Yeah,
in Sam's truck. Yeah, we pick it up every morning and
Wow.
and baking it off as we go. In our freezer, we keep the croissant dough and
Wow.
we keep the Dutch crunch. So yeah, it's a lot of bread. So anyway, all this food needs a place to be stored and a place to be prepared.
Yeah.
And it's just gotten to the point where it's beyond ridiculous. Like this summer, we were just like, we give up.
Yeah.
We can't do any more volume.
Yeah.
And, we've got a can rack in between the bathrooms in the back hall, which, it's canned good. So I'm not super bummed about it, but it's just weird. And so, yeah, I bought the whole building 3 years ago, and we're going to be expanding into the whole building. And the kitchen is going to be about almost 6 times the size that it is. The dining room is going to be bigger. And then this space that we're in right now has beautiful natural light, and it will be a dining room. But if we have a private event, we can close a barn door and make it a room for private events and still have more seating. Or like if we're doing a wedding, we need to stage, we can close it and stage out of here, get ready on Thanksgiving, pre-pack boxes in here. So it's really, I need spaces that are versatile because this business is like accordion. In the summer, we're doing at least 5 times the business that we can do in the winter on a day, and that's a lot. That's a lot of expansion and contraction. So I think that's one of the cool things about this business is it can expand and contract and pivot. And like we made it through COVID successfully because we were able to, really flip on a dime. And that's just kind of how I am. I like things to be versatile. Like all the equipment in my kitchen, I always have it on wheels, and all the ovens and stoves are on quick release gas lines, so that we can rearrange the kitchen if we need to and pull things aside. And
Yeah.
But anyway.
And clean.
Yeah.
I mean,
clean,
you can,
exactly. Pull it all out and scrub behind it. So
what is your employee, like, how, I can't imagine, or maybe I'm asking because I don't know. Do you increase your employee headcount by 5 times in the summer as well?
No, we don't. Yeah, like probably it'll double with college help and kids and things in the summer, which works out perfect. But in the winter, no. People get a little more time off, but most people, after killing themselves all summer, they're okay if they get an extra day off a week or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were mentioning before a little bit about the labor shortage.
Yeah.
About how it's challenging to find at any price, find the people willing to do the work.
So those have been my 2 limitations for expansion is I couldn't get enough staff and I didn't have enough space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that when we get more space, that'll draw more staff because the kitchen won't be so like stressful and overwhelming and on top of each other. It'll be a really beautiful brand new kitchen. And I'm making sure to incorporate things like we want to have skylights in there so there's natural light and really soft flooring to support our backs. and I'm trying to get hoods in that have sound reduction in them for our hearing and
Oh, the vents to
yeah. So
yeah.
the exhaust fans, like variable speed and baffling, and I'm willing to spend some extra money to make it a kitchen because I've spent my whole life, my whole adult life in a kitchen, and I want it to be a healthy experience for people.
It has it's very reminiscent of a workshop to me.
Yeah.
Where
And I love that about it.
yeah.
Growing up in my dad's workshop, I love where tools are all lined up and there's things on the wall and the shelves are full of, you can look and see what you need.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And stations, like this is where we do this at. Yeah. And the new kitchen will be very much that way.
Yeah. Christine Curry shared this term with me that she learned called mise en place.
Oh, mise en place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Everything.
A place for everything and everything in its place.
Yeah. It's the first time I ever heard that word.
It's a French chef's word
for
kitchens. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of lit this light bulb in my mind where, oh, there should be a place for everything. What an interesting word to have to explain organization.
Yeah.
One word.
Yeah. And it's not just your tools, it's like your food. Like get your recipe out and bring everything out so that before you get started on that recipe, you know that you have all the ingredients for it. And then you begin measuring them and you put them in the order that you're going to need them. And yeah, just really setting yourself up for success.
Do other cultures have other ways of preparing food, or is that just what naturally happens?
I think it's what naturally happens, and I love to use like doing a stir fry, like 90% of your time is in gathering your ingredients and then cutting them just perfectly and then lining them up in the order that you're going to add them to the wok, and then you're basically cooking for like 2 minutes,
Oh wow.
So
that reminds me of like a seafood boil where you need to put the potatoes in first.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
yeah, it's all time and temp.
So what learnings, culturally speaking, from other disciplines of cooking? Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of like Greek versus French or Italian versus French or anything like that. Is there any contrast that's very obvious when you look at food culturally from a different standpoint? Like I know, for instance, I was living in a hippie commune, for lack of a better word, with a native from, I believe it was Nigeria, and she always ate with her hands. A lot of it was hand food. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's an example I can think of off the top of my head. Can you think of any?
I see a lot more similarity than differences.
Oh.
But what is really cool is like looking at food that comes from the Middle East and things like, why did they put their cheese in a salt brine? Well, they didn't have refrigeration and it's hot and they didn't have caves. Oh. So putting it in a salt brine was the way of preserving it. So it's really interesting to see how foods evolved from different places.
Fermentation.
Fermentation, salt, like olives are stored in salt or oils and things like that. And a lot of our foods, it just came from necessity of location. So
I was watching YouTube videos the other day and somebody was showing me on the YouTube video about buttering eggs. How you take butter and you rub the butter on the outside of the egg, I think it was, and then you put them in a mason jar and they last for, eggs already last for a long time, but then they last for like 6 months instead of just like 3 weeks.
So I think that must be like an anaerobic seal on them or something.
It's gotta be, yeah. I think it just, they already have that membrane over the shell that
if you don't wash them.
If you don't wash them.
Yeah.
I just got 3 chickens in Easter. Yeah.
Cool.
I know. It's really cool. Anybody that's thinking about chickens, do it.
Right.
I found these chickens online. They're all black and they're the rarest chickens there are. And they go for $2,500 for an adult chicken.
Oh my God, wouldn't that suck if a fox came and got that chicken?
It's like a car.
Raccoon, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like a raccoon just ate my Civic.
Yeah, right. That would suck.
Oh.
People are ridiculous. That's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah. You can start them as eggs online. A dozen fertilized eggs cost $200.
Wow.
And then you gotta.
Well, there we have urban farming. How having chickens in the cities become a thing.
Yeah.
Because country farmers aren't paying $2,500 for chickens. So that is definitely like a designer,
A gentleman
city
farmer.
folk.
Yeah.
That's a city folk chicken. There.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But that's like a cool example of how things
Yeah.
organically evolve.
Yeah. So now, speaking of evolutions, one of the things I remember you saying earlier about Zingerman's was the open book policy. And that's something that you've evolved into, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. We have open book with all our employees, so anyone can come and look. And if they don't know how to read the books, I'll teach them how to read the books, because you need to know the bottom line. And I think it makes people a lot more aware of what they're doing and how they're spending their time and what they're throwing away and waste, when they can see how slim the margins really are, and how they can really personally have an effect on whether the business makes it or doesn't make it, And so, yeah, I share books with people and teach them how to read the.
So are you sharing with them real numbers?
Oh, yeah. And we do monthly meetings with my chefs, so we can see exactly where we're at, and we're looking at percentages, and we look at like different contrasts, like, putting the payroll against the income to see what that ratio looks like. So, yeah. And again, that was a thing that I was never into. I didn't really care about numbers. I just wanted to cook.
Yeah.
But it turns out you can't keep cooking unless you pay attention to the numbers.
Come to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. But if you didn't have that optimistic view in the beginning, would you have gotten started? It's almost like,
who would do anything if they knew what it was going to take?
No kidding.
Who would have kids?
What's Ray's saying about fear?
Oh, I love it. Fear is the only emotion that lives in the future. You're never afraid of what's happening to you in the moment. Fear is something that this is going to, is this going to happen next? Is this going to happen next? So.
And you had a great example of a car.
Yeah. So this is Ray's example. He says, if you're driving in a car and there's a cliff in front of you and you're not going to be able to stop in time, you're not afraid of driving in the car. You're afraid of hitting the edge of that cliff. And when your car comes to the edge of the cliff, you're not afraid of the edge of the cliff anymore. You're afraid of going over the edge. And once you're going over the edge, you're not afraid of going over the edge. You're afraid of like hitting the bottom, hitting ground. And by the time you hit the ground, there's a whole different set of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not fear. It's always fear is about what's going to happen next. You know? And definitely fear has a place in our lives to protect us, and that's the purpose of it. But I don't know why, but I think we've gotten so overwired for fear and anxiety that it's just really hard to keep ourselves in check with our fear.
Yeah, it's almost, I think this is maybe a strange comparison, but I think of fear a little bit like sugar, in the sense of like, it's really good in small doses.
Yeah.
Like sugar, honey, I guess, is probably the first thing that humans found that's super, 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 super sweet, that doesn't need to be like refined. That was a good discovery.
In the moment, it can get you through.
Yeah. Well, just like fear is such it's such a teacher.
Yeah.
To know what it is that you're scared of is to know what it is that a lot of times you ought to be doing, if it's a well-founded fear and not just crazy stuff.
Right.
But in small doses, and in today's society, it seems that we're just surrounded with fear. The same as sugar. We're surrounded with sugar. We're surrounded with fear.
Yeah,
and
everything is so amplified, and it's so easy to live in fear. And my philosophy, my spirituality is completely based on, are you fear-based or love-based? To me, that's heaven and hell.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're fear-based, you're going to draw more of that to you, thoughts held in mind reproduce in their kind. So if you're full of fear, you're going to draw that fear to you, and you're going to experience a lot of fearful things in your life, and if you're love-based and you believe in love, that we're basically all, made of love, and that's the glue that keeps us all together, you're going to find a lot more love in the world. And
so what is love to you?
Love is understanding that there's no difference between you and you deserve everything good that could possibly come to you, because it not only benefits you, it benefits the whole of us, the unis, we are all one.
How do you
And
love
I'm
somebody that you don't know? Like
just,
a difficult customer comes in, let's say, and they're probably hungry and stressed out and they're on vacation. They want it to be perfect, and the sandwich is 30 seconds later than they think, and they lose their temper on you.
yeah, so what's going on there is that's a person who needs extra love.
Oh.
So hurt people.
Yeah.
So that's a person who isn't receiving enough love, or their receptors aren't open to the love. And so their normal experience is to go out gruffly and like have aggressive or unpleasant experiences with people, which thoughts held in mind reproduce in their kind. So it's just reinforcing their belief system. So when you can see through that pain and that anger and not take it personally, because it's never about you. They were angry before they came in,
Yeah.
or you triggered anger in someone, yet you didn't create that anger in them. It's really easy to just forgive someone and know that they just need a little more love. And I would love to say that I'm 100% on this, but I'm not at all.
Yeah, who is,
but
right?
I'm working on it. And I've had a lot more successful interactions this year than I did last year. And last year I did from the year before. So I'm still growing, and it works really well. And it feels so beautiful when I don't get triggered by someone else's anger anymore, but instead help calm them down a little bit, give them what they need. And if I don't, it's not my problem.
Yeah. What things do you have in your life that keep you grounded and open to love instead of fear or hate?
Yeah, well, that's funny. The first thing that comes to mind is my daily cacao practice.
Oh, nice.
Which I've been doing for years now, and I took a training this spring. And for people who don't know, cacao is not the same as like hot chocolate.
Yeah,
it's my little Coke, my Nestle's cocoa practice every day.
I love 85% dark chocolate.
Yeah, so cacao is like the original chocolate that was just rediscovered, I don't know, like 30 years ago in Mexico. And it has a very different chemical makeup than today's chocolate. It has way more theobromine and didyl-9 and all these chemicals in it that are very relaxing to us, but also very heart-opening, and they make us more sensitive to each other. And so I find when I drink a cup of that mindfully that it just opens my heart more for the day. And so that's a really big thing I do. And I think I shared with you yesterday, I have a gratitude rampage that if I've really got a stinky attitude, I'm like, okay, it's time for a gratitude rampage. And so like on my drive to work, I'll just like out loud start shouting the first thing that comes to mind that I'm grateful for. And I'll just, for 20 minutes all the way to work, I'll just do that out loud, and it can completely shift my mindset. So those are two of the big things. And then, you and I have talked, plant medicine has been a big ally for me, when used ceremonially, and the things that have happened in ceremony have been profound and changed me forever. And without a doubt, I know there is a benevolent God energy coursing through every single thing in this world.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Is that a belief that you were raised with? Is it something that you've arrived at?
No. And I remember like when I was in high school and I would smoke pot, I would have like tremendous guilt. Like, I'm going to go crazy or get addicted to drugs,
Yeah.
And then when that went away, I was just like, this is illegal and I shouldn't be doing it. And then when that went away, it was just like, oh, there's anxiety here and I don't even know why. And I think I was just so conditioned, And I remember when I was younger, like in my college days, if I would try mushrooms or something, the guilt would almost ruin the trip. And then I finally got to the point, I don't know how many years ago, where I'm like, wow, these are medicines. These are plants put here by God, and we're not abusing them. Like when you use them ceremonially and allow yourself to sink in and meditate and let the plant talk to you and share its wisdom with you, you can get some really profound downloads, and it's always love.
Yeah.
It's always love.
Yeah.
You know?
The world's really waking up to psilocybin, it seems.
Yeah.
There's an incredible amount of research going on at very prestigious medical research hospitals. And I think Colorado's decriminalized them. I think Ann Arbor's decriminalized them. I think Washington's starting to talk about it. I'm sure Michigan's on the heels. Even now it's like a $250 misdemeanor fine. I mean, it's not like you're going to jail forever, but it's still illegal. So there's that tension.
I had a mushroom experience. I think it was last winter, and I just started weeping. I was weeping for the land and just how beautiful this planet is, and what a miracle it is that we even exist at this time and space, you know, and that everything is just happening as it is. And then I got this deep message, you know, go more, you know, do more, do what you can. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to make my business a model of caring for Earth, and I know I can do better. What do you want me to do next? And I got a vision of my paper goods closet, and it's like everything in there needs to be compostable and as clean as you can possibly get it, you know? And so, you know, I try to use all glass bottles, and that's why we switched from the deli containers that were way more sturdy and you could reuse them at home and stuff, to the compostable deli containers that the lids kind of pop off from. And if you put something hot in them, they collapse a little bit, you know, but it's better for the planet. And so we all need to be a little bit inconvenienced for the convenience of the planet, you know?
Yeah.
Just take it the next step. You don't have to get it perfect, but do something, you know?
Yeah.
That was a message to me, Chris. Just continue to do something more always.
Yeah. My downloads have always been along the lines of that I'm sometimes trying too hard to calm down and take it from 11 down to like a 7 or an 8.
Right.
Sometimes it is also, but the reason to do that is to be able to do more.
Yeah.
So I don't burn out.
And be more present in the moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know my early years were certainly marked by trying too hard. I took karate classes, taekwondo classes from Master Boone. He likes to be called Mr. Boone, but he is Master Boone in Hamilton. And he's also got a small dojo in Saugatuck as well. But his biggest feedback for me was that I was kicking too hard. He says, you kick too hard. And also, I think he's in his mid to late 50s. I hope I'm getting that right. He looks like he's 25, I think. But I asked him what he practices as well when we were taking the classes. And they've got these technique called forms, where you're essentially doing 15 movements in a repetitive process. And he told me that every morning he practices the first one. It's called Basic 1. It's the first one that every student learns, whether they're 6 years old or 60 years old or whatever. And that was such an eye-opening comment for him to make to me, that it's really the basics over and over and over and over and over. Basics. Don't kick so hard.
Yeah.
Focus on the basics.
Don't rush to the end of everything.
Enjoy the process. Yeah.
It's the same way with art and everything, you know?
It's all we have, I think, a lot of times, is the process.
Yeah.
I coached entrepreneur students in Grand Valley for about a year or so, but as a job. It wasn't just volunteer work. And there's so often young people want the result, and it never works if you don't like the process.
Well, that's interesting, because the result is an extrinsic reward, whereas the process is an intrinsic enjoyment of it, you know? And if you skip that to get that, you might get a dopamine hit for a second, but then that's gone, and you got to do it again, you know? And then you got to do it better and stronger. But if you can intrinsically enjoy the process and stay in the moment, like, that gives you a long-term satisfaction for a happy life, you know? I was getting my hair done today, and she's like, you got to go back to work? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, ugh. It's so hard to go back to work after you've taken a break. And I'm like, no, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
Like, I love
Yeah.
cooking more today than I loved cooking in 1985 when I was in culinary school. Like, I'm so excited to cook. You know, I never get sick of cooking. And I'm like, how lucky am I that I've spent my life doing something that brings me more joy and excitement, and I'm more enthusiastic about now than I was when I
Yeah.
was 20. Like, who can say that, man? I feel blessed.
Yeah. Yeah. To have a purpose that you know is your purpose.
Yeah.
To not be searching for who it is that you want to be or what you want to do or
Yeah.
who you want to serve doing what.
But at the same time, you need to be humble, because that purpose isn't the only thing you are.
Mhm.
You know, like, it's really easy to get so into being a chef that, like, I am Chef Chris, and outside of Chef Chris, who am I? You know, and what do I do? And, you know, I work long hours, so
Yeah.
how do I identify myself? You know, and so, yeah, it's great to have a purpose, but our purpose is to serve each other. You
Mhm.
know, no matter what we're doing. And
How do you remain mindful of what you're describing? What practices do you have in your life to retain your humanity outside of work, being such
oh,
a
I get my ass kicked all the time. It's really easy to, like,
Yeah.
just stumble and make mistakes, and, like, yeah, like, oh man, I have so far to go, you know. And
Yeah.
just keep it real. And I don't know that I've had particularly hard times in my life or struggles, but I do know what heartbreak feels like, and I do know what disappointment feels like, and I do know what, you know, losing someone and having someone you love deeply die in violent ways, and, you know, life happens. So I feel like that gives me a compassion for other people, that, like, if you've got a beautiful relationship going on, cherish that, you know. And when you've got these little kids that are, like, so excited about Christmas, like, fucking hold on to that, man, because that is the most magical time of your life, you know. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's going to get really heavy and not so, you know, really gnarly, but it's going to come back around again too, you know.
Yeah.
So I think just general life ass kicking keeps you humble, doesn't it?
Yes. It does. It does.
And being humble makes you more
I see what you're saying.
humanity, you know,
Okay.
in touch with each other. Like,
Yeah.
I need you to help pull me out of this situation, and I will be there for you.
Community.
Yeah. I had another. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. I'm not gonna. That's too long of a story.
Self-censor.
Yeah.
Self-censor.
Yeah, we're not gonna tell that story now, but it's a cool story. I'll share with you sometime.
Deal.
Yeah. But just about, you know, when you need me, I will be there for you, and when I need you, I know you'll be there for me too.
It's
you know?
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's for me, that comfort has only arrived recently in the last few years, moving back to home,
Yeah.
moving back to South Haven, Saugatuck, Glen, really.
Being
but
in a super cool community.
well, yeah, there's no place like home.
No, there really isn't.
There isn't. The friendships that I have are mostly friendships I've had my whole life for the most part, or there's a connection in the sense of, like, you know, you and I know each other from South Haven and the
Yeah.
mutual friends and this and that, and it's like, oh, I can get a sense for.
But you know what was really cool is when I met your dad.
Yeah.
Like, your dad knew my dad and loved my dad. And like, I thought, like, that just gave our connection a whole nother level of depth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so cool, you know?
I'm glad you brought your dad up again, because there was one more thing I wanted to make sure we got recorded, and that is the flamingos on the corner of
right.
Phoenix and Blue Star
Right.
for years.
Yeah. When did that start? Like, I don't know.
It
if
had to
was
have been
in
like the
late
90s.
70s. It was
the late
definitely in the
70s?
80s.
What?
I think maybe it was the 80s, but yeah,
I
I think
only
it was
know-
going when I was in high school. Yeah.
They were doing it that long?
I think so. Yeah.
I remember it from when I was in high school, and I was in high school in the late 90s. And then it seemed like I moved away and I came back and there was a Walgreens there. And I don't really remember when that happened.
I don't either, because that really hurt.
It
when
was
they
that was tough.
when they
That
tore down my grandma's house, man. That sucked.
yeah.
I still have dreams that I'm in her house, and I'm like, everybody thinks it's gone, but I know it's not. You
They
know?
just buried it.
Yeah, right. Here it is.
Yeah. So for those of you that weren't in South Haven in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, how many of the 15 flamingos? The
Oh, I
kind
don't
of
know.
lawn or
Yeah.
20 maybe?
I have no idea.
It seemed
But
like
the flock got pretty big for a while.
a flock. Yeah. And every single day there was a new diorama
Yeah.
of whatever
Ridiculous themes.
hats,
Yeah.
glasses,
Yeah.
scarves,
Yeah.
rockets.
Right. And then people would send them more flamingos, you know. And, yeah. And, you know, when there was something significant happening in the news, they would always like somehow incorporate that into the flamingos.
It was just, it's hard to exactly put words to it, but it felt so good to drive by there every day. And there was just
silly, pointless.
Just fun.
Fun. Just fun for the sake of fun.
Yeah. Performance art in a way. And never saw them out there, never saw them moving them. Just, it'd be different every day.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
It was really cool. And they got such joy from doing it, you know?
Yeah.
That was really cool that they did that.
What kind of feedback would they get from the community?
Oh, great feedback.
Would people come up and knock on the door? And
I don't know if they would or not, or if they'd receive letters, but yeah, people would send them different things for the flamingos, and people would, on vacation, would take pictures of the flamingos and like, hey, you know, I was visiting from Ireland or whatever, you know, and...
Got to dig up those pictures somewhere.
I need to talk to Cheryl a little bit more about the flamingos.
Resurrect the...
Yeah, right.
Did they have a name for the flock?
I don't know if they did or not.
No?
You know, yeah.
Got to think of a name for the flock.
Yeah, right. Maybe they did.
Yeah.
Yep. I need to talk to Cheryl more about that. But yeah, that was a fun little goofy thing in South Haven for a long time.
Yeah. Long time.
Yeah.
It was such an institution.
And it's kind of the opposite of my mother, you know. I can see why my mom and dad in the long term didn't work out. You know, my mom is always, she was like the #1 realtor for Coldwell Banker for the state of California in the 80s. Yeah. And, you know, she was very type A personality, get it done. Wow. You know, not to say my mom's not fun. My mom is very funny and fun, but very driven, very...
No time to fiddle with flamingos.
Results oriented. Whereas my dad was very ride the wave of the creativity. And so I feel very lucky and blessed to have had both of those viewpoints, you know, and sometimes I struggle with it.
Can you see both sides in you too?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Did it take a while to reconcile that, to combine?
I still haven't reconciled.
Yeah.
You know, I'll go too far in one direction and like, hey, go back to start having fun, you know? And again, that's where the fear comes in, you know? If I get afraid about money, you know, I will like push really hard and like, we need this much money to get the renovations going, you know, and I'll give up my fun and my joy, and the money will start to dissipate. And then I'm like, wait a minute, oh shoot, I got out of balance, you know, and like go have some fun, go to Kauai and cruise around on a rubber raft and snorkel for a month and come back, and then it comes
that's
back.
something.
It's the opposite of what you think. And so many things in life are like, we're talking about, you know, racing and things, but one thing I know is if I'm in a hurry to get something done and I try to rush through it, it will take me twice as long. But if I go, oof, I've got to have this done in 1 hour, I'm going to go really slow and focus. It gets done faster. So many things in this world are the opposite of what they appear to be. And when I need more money, I need to go play and have some fun and let the creative juices flow, and the income rises in relationship to that, you know?
You could almost classify that by saying that you rest in faith.
Yeah, you have to.
That you kind of release the control of the thing to.
But I also know that I'm not going to get any really great ideas, and I'm going to be kind of a pain in the ass and grouchy to be around. And sometimes my staff will go, hey, do you need to take an extra day off next week? And I'm like, sorry. I probably do. Sorry. You know, but I've got a really forgiving, awesome staff who knows me really well. And I do a lot better when I don't go too long with pushing myself too hard, you know.
What was it like growing a team of? What was it like growing your team? Did it start off with like a key player that brought in other people, or was it just kind of?
Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, if I were to put it on like a full sweep, you know, like a time lapse, you know, to see who comes and goes and who brings people in, and then they leave and those people stay. And other than this last couple of years with COVID, I believe that you know, the universe always brings you the right person at the right time, although, you know, staffing has been really challenging the last year, you know, and I can't believe I can't find enough dishwashers, you know, in the summer, and but it is.
Yeah.
It's a tricky time. Things aren't the way they used to be.
Do you have any tips for other entrepreneurs in retaining staff?
Treat them with love and respect.
Yeah.
You know, realize that they all have lives going on, and realize that they're doing the best they can, and, you know, give them a hand, and don't ask them to work a ton of overtime, and
give them a hand.
Treat them the way you would like to be treated, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I had a chef one time. I had just found out I was pregnant, so I was super hormonal, and it was a holiday weekend. And his wife had told me how she wanted this dessert buffet set up. And she told me what time she wanted it set up. And so I did it exactly. And I thought it looked really beautiful. And he goes, desserts don't come out until 1 o'clock, you know. If we run out of desserts, I'm going to rip your fucking head off and cram it down your neck, you know. And I was like, whoa. And I went home and I was crying. I'm like, I thought I did such a good job. And this guy just went off on me, you know. And I was really sensitive. And my husband's like, you don't have to go back there.
Yeah.
You don't have to ever work there ever again, you know. And I gave him notice, but like, I'm like, yeah, that was a horrible atmosphere to work in, you know. And another time I wasn't a good fit there. There was a piece of chocolate mousse torte that was like they were going to throw away. So I kind of rolled it into a dog turd, you know, in a loop, and I put it on a little piece of wax paper, and I put it on the floor, like in a corner in the kitchen, and it was so funny. It looked exactly like someone had just taken a little dump there, you know, and it was going to get thrown away anyway. Yeah. And so the chef then comes in and he goes, what is this? And I go, it was a piece of cake we're going to throw away. And he goes, this is not funny. Chris, this is not funny. And the more he said that, the harder I was laughing, you know. I'm like, that is just making it way more funny, you know. So I knew that wasn't the place for me, you know. Yeah. Totally taking themselves way too seriously. So trying to keep it lighthearted, giving people the benefit of the doubt, but also letting them know that I have high expectations. And if they're not meeting those, kindly letting them know that, like, hey, I have faith in you. I know you can do this, and I expect a little bit more out of you. You know, we all need that once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it helps to be gentle about it, but also consistent. Yeah. You know, if you can see that somebody's got more than they're bringing to the table, I think a lot of times it can be persons, you know, personalities are in the way or things are in the way, and just to keep on them, keep that appropriate pressure on them, and say,
yeah, and you're not doing anyone a favor when you let them get away with some crap, you know? What you're basically telling them is, I know you can't do any better. Yeah. And they know they're not giving it their all. Like, I'm very much about, you know, your name is on this, be proud of it. Do your best, you know, and I know from day to day your best is different, but still do your best that day, that moment.
It feels like being hands off and empowering chefs especially could be very difficult, though, because you're feeding people. It's food.
Yeah, it has to be right.
It has to be right.
And you have to be safe, and there's a lot of things you have to do. And when I back way out of it and go, like, this is insane to do this. It's like such a huge responsibility. Like, I could kill somebody, you know? Yeah.
Inadvertently. Yeah. I mean, the food recalls that happen, I don't know if they affect you like they do normal consumers, but
normally not as much, because we don't really work with big companies like our local farms, you know, like I said, you know, yesterday. Yeah. Like, lettuce has salmonella recall in California. I'm like, that doesn't affect us. We get our greens from Mud Lake,
Yeah.
up the road,
Yeah.
So,
The local economy of it all.
yeah, it keeps it safer and it keeps it more real and buffered. And
So what kind of tips would you have for somebody that's starting out that, looks up to you from a distance? Maybe you've never even met, maybe they're in a different city or a different state or something like that, but they're like, I want to be just like Chris Ferris someday. What would you say is the first step to getting going in a endeavor such as this?
follow your heart, follow your bliss. What gets you excited? What is it that you're trying to do for people, and really believe in what you're doing, and then just stick with it. And I had some mentors when I first opened the deli that I'm like, I can't do this. I remember crying, like, it's not working. I can't do it. And they're like, you can't stop.
Yeah.
Keep going. You're going to get through this.
The only
It's
way
gonna
through is
work.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So like,
Is there
just knowing that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just knowing that it's going to get more difficult than you can imagine, but you will get through it,
What do you think the best way to start is? Do you think that the catering, the way that do you think that your trajectory is common in the sense of beginning with catering, moving
No,
into
I don't think there's any one way to start, but I think some things that I see some of the young cooks doing these days are like, I'm going to work for you for a few years, and then I'm going to work here for a few years, and really start gathering experience from different chefs and different restaurants that I like, and really, that hone your skill and dial in what you like, and eventually you will figure out who you are and what your niche is and what you want to do,
Trust the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting back to that.
Give it your best everywhere you go, and then take what you learned with you to the next thing,
Yeah. I think that sometimes can be easier said than done. The focusing on the thing immediately in front of you and just trying to improve your own skills rather than having this great big dream of,
Yeah.
it's like
Stay in the moment.
Stay in the moment.
And don't let fear overtake
Creep in.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about any advice for community organizing? I think that you here at the deli have created a real community hub with feeding people, with providing space for people to get together and chat and warm cup of coffee. I think that it's really what the world needs right now. Do you have any?
I agree with that. And that was my intention from the beginning, on my business plan. I said I wanted to be a hub for the community, and that includes, the fringy community too. Like,
Yeah.
I love the freaks and the oddballs, and like, come on in, and you have a place here too. You're welcome here. Everybody's welcome here.
Yeah.
And I'm just really grateful that it turned out to be. But I think being genuine and putting your money where your mouth is and walking the walk, and one of the things I said I was going to do the first year, I couldn't because I got started way too late. But I'm like, I am not going to close in the winter. We're going to stay open. And that has brought a really unique and beautiful relationship with the locals. And, we have the time to talk to them and get to know them. And, it's really fun on a blizzardy day, and stomp. Someone comes in, and they get a cup of chili, and like, you're just so happy to see them. Like, we need that connection in the winter,
Yeah.
We need each other. We need something to hold on to. And we've got some elderly people that come in on the same day at the same time every week, and the staff out front is so loving and kind to them, and if we miss them for a week, we're like, what's going on,
Yeah.
And that's what community is, like,
And
checking in on each other.
The folks that you have here are exceptional with names.
I know, better than me.
It's unbelievable.
I know.
It really is.
It
I mean, it
is.
just shows you that they care, they're paying attention,
Yeah.
they know who you are. You come in here and you're gonna get a hello by name
Yeah.
from at least a couple people
Yeah.
usually.
And Rihanna is like she's some sort of wizard, magician, people person. Like, I've never met anyone like her, you know. She knows who everyone is, and she knows what they love, and she's genuinely happy to see them when they come in. And like, besides doing all that, she's doing 1,000 or 1,000,000 other things at the same time, and she's just so calm and welcoming. And I'm
Best espresso in the
she-
land.
She is. She's really something.
Yeah.
And so is Christina. Like, I mean, just everyone I have out there has
Yeah.
you know,
Cece.
something really special and amazing. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. I'm
Yeah,
really
you-
blessed.
You've got the brothers chefing in the
Yeah,
back. It's really,
exactly.
you've done such a good job.
Super cool people working here.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is like letting people be who they are.
Yeah.
Because we need all that well-roundedness. And, you know, I've had some Oscar the Grouches work here, and even that is allowed
Yeah.
to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You know? And,
You put them on the tough tourists.
no, we keep them in the back.
Oh, keep them in the back.
Keep them in the kitchen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
very much for joining me. What can the community expect for this next phase then?
Well, I'm going to try like heck to stay open through it as
Mhm.
much as we can. You know, there might be a period of time where we have to close while we're transitioning and flipping some things over, but we're going to keep everyone informed as to what's going on. And like next summer, let's hope that the sandwiches come out faster and, you know, we have more room, so we'll have more creativity and even more, you know, homemade food coming out. and
Super cool.
Just more awesomeness, more creativity. And yeah.
So for those that don't know, where can they find you on Instagram? Farmhouse?
Yeah, Farmhouse Deli.
Is it
our
underscore,
Instagram.
right? Farmhouse it's just one word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Farmhouse Deli. And our website is the Farmhouse Deli.
Okay.
If you want to check that out. Yeah.
All right. There you go, everybody. Stay tuned. Big
you can
things.
order online.
Order online?
Yeah. If you're in a hurry, just order your sandwich online and swing through and pick it up. So,
Cool. There's a pro tip for you,
yeah.
impatient eaters. Well, Christine, thank you very much.
Thank you, Spencer.
Been quite a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always great. Whether
Yeah.
we're walking on the beach or walking in the woods.
Looking
or,
for rocks.
Yeah, hanging out. It's always a good time to be with you. So thanks for being one of my best friends.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you too.